Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
And we're glad you're with us once again for another interesting look at whatever we have planned for you, because...
Yeah, the mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
How was your... I want to get right into the news. How was Memorial Weekend?
It was good. It was nice and relaxing. It had been a rather busy week at work prior. And so it was nice to have the extra day off and not really do a lot of stuff. Of course, it's obviously Memorial Day weekend's a very important weekend down here, to honor those who have given everything in service to their country. And we certainly don't want to lose sight of that amongst the various cookouts and beach days and what have you. But
it is good to be able to take a pause and just, enjoy kind of a moment away from work and time with family. And that in of itself, I think, is a way of honoring those that have already sacrificed their life so you can live your life that way.
Exactly. And that's why they do what they do, so we can do what we do. And we're thankful for that. But yeah, I'm good. How was your relatively normal average weekend?
My relatively normal weekend was pretty good.
Good.
Yeah. So all is well. We had good weather. So it was nice to be outside with my girlies, and they were riding their bikes. It's definitely feeling like summer mode.
Oh, it's definitely summer mode here already, because I can't complain. I mean, last week it was pretty hot. It was August level of hot.
Well, you were saying in the 90s?
Upper 90s.
Yeah, in the 40s.
Yeah, we were closer to mid 90s, but we thought we were going to get into the upper 90s, but it didn't quite get that hot, thankfully. And this weekend, I think it was 89, so it wasn't too bad. It's just a little bit under 90, but
still too hot.
Yeah, and it's just we're getting to that part of the year that I just dread because it's so hot,
But I bet the lizards are happy.
The iguanas?
We don't have any iguanas falling out of trees. Please.
Yes, I'm sure they are. Well, no iguanas in Canada, huh?
No.
I mean, I guess maybe you could have a reptile exhibit at a zoo or something, perhaps. But
yeah, I mean, we do have we have a reptile.
They're not native
at our zoo. Yes.
I'm sorry. What'd you call them again?
A reptile exhibit.
I thought you said a repel exhibit. I'm like that. Okay. I mean,
I know some people find them icky. Actually, I find them really interesting. I just don't want to. I have no interest in owning one as a pet.
No, I thought you were saying it like reptile.
Reptilian?
Reptili or something, some fancy French version of the word or something,
I was actually getting into a really interesting conversation about different words that Americans and Canadians say. I was watching a TikTok, and this lady was saying how people were really upset with how she was saying adult. And I was and then she said a bunch of words, and I messaged my boyfriend, Nick's workshop. And I said, am I saying these words wrong? Do you guys honestly not say these things? And so we had a conversation about these words. And apparently, I say a few of them different as a Canadian.
Yeah, I wish I had been included in that conversation. That could have been fun.
Okay, so, I wish I could have a piece of paper and hold up the word for you. But so I say pasta.
Pasta.
So you say pasta.
Mm-hmm.
So weird. Foyer.
You mean foyer? You mean the area, a lobby kind of thing?
The lobby of a building, a foyer.
It's a foyer.
What was the other one? Oh, niche. A niche market or a niche environment. But some people say niche.
Yeah, that I've heard that both ways. So I tend to say niche just so it kind of stands out a little more. Because if you just say niche, it's what'd you call me? You know what I mean? So I put the emphasis on the front half, so you know what I'm saying.
This was a hotly debated one. Is route, ROUTE? Some people say route.
Oh, okay. First, I thought you were talking about the root of a tree.
No, not
okay.
a root of a tree. No.
Route.
I'm going to take this route down the highway to go to the doctors.
I'm just trying to think how I would say it. I would say route.
You would?
Well, it's weird. I think I use both. because like if it's Route 66, because of the song, I say
Right.
Route 66. I don't think of it. If I casually were to say, "Oh, go on that route" or something,
And
I
the big
think
thing was if you say rerouting or rerouting, your GPS is talking.
rerouting.
Did I
Not
say it's rerouting?
no, you're rerouting because it's Route 66. But rerouting, not
Language
rerouting.
fun.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like baked. Spell baked.
Baked. So
Yeah.
BAKED.
Right. Okay. Now spell naked.
NAKED.
Okay. Now,
But I know.
why is one baked and the other one's not naked? Or
Right?
why is naked not baked?
That is very true. I actually had a French professor teaching my intro to history course, and he was saying like the and we're taking notes, and we're like, and what? And he's like, the and we're like, and what? And we're all kind of giggling, and he's like, you think that my language is ridiculous? And he wrote OMB, OMB, OMB on the board. And we're all looking at him like, what is he gonna do? And he put a C for comb, a B for bomb, and a T for tomb. He's like, how does this make sense?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
No, English is I like, and to be honest with you, I respect people who have to learn English as a second language because
Absolutely.
it does not make sense.
Nope.
It only makes
Nope.
sense because you grow up speaking it and you've
Yep.
never given it a second thought to think how hard this one is to learn.
Oh, it's so hard. I used to have a lot of Filipino students that would come over after March break. And I would say, like, God bless you guys that you're trying to learn this crazy, wacky language. And the English kids would make fun of me. They'd be like, well, it's not that hard. And I'd be like, guys, you have house and houses. You have a mouse and mice.
Right.
You have moose and moose. Like, tell me how this language makes sense. And the Filipino kids would be giggling.
Because they get it. They're like,
they get
finally, somebody that understands how hard this is for us. But
yeah.
Anyway, no.
Sorry,
good.
Language tangent there.
Yeah, right. Anyway, well, speaking of Memorial Day, that kind of does take us into our first topic for this week, Trish.
It does. And I'm assuming communication would have been very key for this event as well, between all of the Allied troops that are going to storm the beaches of Normandy on D-Day on June 6th, 1944. Right? Did you know there was more than one D-Day during World War II, Mike?
More than one D-Day?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew this.
Yep. There's actually numerous D-Days because the D in D-Day just stands for day, and it was the code designated for any important military operation.
Yes. Okay. And that stands. Yes. Sorry. I was like, I'm not sure where you're going with this, but okay. I get you now.
Speaking of language, right? Language barrier. So now it's just become synonymous with this, of course, very, very important operation.
Right.
Where we're going to have those 155,000 Allied troops storming the beaches of Normandy, France, which is going to open up a second front for the battle in World War II, so that now Hitler, is fighting a battle on two sides. And once they could take the French territories back, there was limited resources for Hitler and his army. So it was extremely significant that it went to plan and that it appropriately, because there was a lot at stake here, and there was a lot of German troops that were waiting on the beaches. There was over 850,000 troops awaiting the invasion. Now, many were Eastern European conscripts. Some were actually even Koreans that they had brought up into the Western Front. And there's going to be 60 infantry divisions in France and 10 panzer divisions, so the tanks, in possession of 1,552 tanks, although not were all combat ready. So where the Allies landed, they had 80,000 troops and one panzer ready for this amphibious attack, which is going to be the largest amphibious attack in military history. And they were extremely worried about the casualties. So I know your president, Eisenhower. Oh, no, wait, was Eisenhower president? He's going to become president.
No, he's president.
Yeah. So he's General Dwight Eisenhower during this invasion. And I guess going on to become president. I don't actually know when he became president. Here's my Canadian showing. But he was told.
Go ahead.
He was told that the casualties could be like 50 to 75%. So they were bracing for a huge amount of casualty. Now, D-Day by the numbers, according to the Allies, we're going to have almost 7,000 ships. We're going to have that. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say Eisenhower. Yeah, Eisenhower was president from 53 to 61. Roosevelt
Okay.
was president when World War II
Well,
happened.
two was happening. I
That
knew
was
Roosevelt was the
yeah.
president at this time frame.
Hmm.
And so Eisenhower was in the 50s and 60s. Now, was Vietnam already happening under him?
Vietnam was under no Eisenhower. His term ended in 61. So then you had Kennedy, and then he was assassinated in 63, and then you had Johnson. So I don't
Right.
know off the top of my head the exact timeline of Vietnam,
Hmm.
but it
When
would
that all
have been
occurred.
around then. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, because I knew
between
as soon as I saw
Johnson and
like
Nixon, somewhere around there.
somewhere it happened, and
Yeah,
I knew like as soon as I saw General Dwight Eisenhower, I'm like, but wait, wasn't he president? But that makes sense that
yeah,
after Roe became the president.
correct.
Um, uh, the troops broken down, you're going to have about almost 62,000 from Britain. There is going to include the United Kingdom. You're going to have 73,000 from America, and then you're going to have 21,400 from Canada. And they're going to storm 5 beaches, and then you're going to have 23,400 airborne troops also assisting in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, it was go time. I mean, that
It was
was
go time.
we're going and we're getting this done because we're tired of this and we're putting it into it, and
Yeah. And
that's
it
what
was
they did.
such a crazy operation that they actually don't have an appropriate estimate of how many fatalities there were. Like I said, they were ranging it from 50 to 75. That's what they were anticipating. John Long, who is the director of education at the National D-Day Memorial Foundation, says that when the memorial was first being planned in Normandy in the 1990s, there was widely different estimates for the fatalities ranging from 5,000 to 12,000. German casualties on D-Day, meanwhile, have been estimated to be between 4,000 and 9,000 killed, wounded, or missing. The Allies also did capture some 200,000 German prisoners of war. That's incredible. Like how now you suddenly have to house and feed and take care of these 200,000 men. It's a big number to suddenly just have to figure out. But
Oh
and
yeah,
they were just, it was go time, like you said. So make it happen.
and go they went, and we're thankful for them because I mean, you wonder if they don't go for it,
Yeah,
like if they don't do that, how much longer the war drags on.
exactly. Yeah. What's interesting is they actually wanted to do the invasion in July of 43. But it just because of limited planning and they just couldn't figure it out and they couldn't communicate and get it ready for that time frame. Um, and they had started kind of planning an invasion in Europe after the evacuation of Dunkirk in 1940. So there's a long time frame of people coming together trying to figure out a plan in order to figure out how to make this operation work. Because D-Day required unprecedented cooperation between the international armed forces. This is going to be the first time that there's going to be this many countries all working together. We had over 2 million troops from 12 countries in Britain preparing for this invasion.
That's a lot of troops.
A lot of troops.
I mean,
And especially think about it, you're not just being able to send off emails, right? Like
oh no.
communication wise, how challenging it would be to ensure everyone was on the same page and to keep it all secret.
Yeah.
You definitely do not want the enemy figuring out your plan.
No, you don't. It's not good if that happens.
Yep. Luckily, it was a success and basically the start of the end.
Could you do that now? Could you have 2 million people there like that to try? Like, I'm just thinking the level of coordination, the communication would absolutely be easier today because you basically back then they would have just been using radio. But
right.
I'm thinking just the more people that would have to know about something with how quickly word travels. Like, a few weeks back, we talked about the raid to get Osama bin Laden. It was a very small group of people that knew. Well, that was easy because it's not a ton of people. But when you're talking a massive tens of thousands of troops on one mission like that,
it's incredible.
A lot,
and then, how would you keep that secret with all of that troop movement, right? Back in this time period, at least they don't have satellite radar. They're not able to, take visual pictures easily.
Right.
You'd have to have spy planes very sneakily trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah. And to be clear, let me clarify, because I do know we have friends that are current or former military,
right?
Or no longer active military, excuse me. I fully trust that the people involved would keep the secrets, but it's just the more people with anything in general is a greater chance that something can get out.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even with the best intentions. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Even with your best intentions, just the more people that know something, the higher the likelihood of it being exposed. Yeah, I don't know. This might never be something that we see in our human history again.
Yeah, I would agree. On that scale, I would think not.
Yeah, on that scale. There'd be other operations, like you said, with obtaining Osama bin Laden that you'd figure it out. But I also just, although it's a huge human loss, right? It's very tragic. I get very emotional when I watch any documentary about D-Day or when we have the D-Day memorials and things like that. But you're just so thankful that people were able to make this sacrifice and have it happen and learn from it. And,
yeah. Well, I
and
totally
that
agree.
it is such a neat story of humans interacting together, working together against a common.
Absolutely. There really isn't a great transition to our next topic, other than,
unfortunately, yeah, when you're talking about something, so serious as this.
Yeah, the best I could do is Elvis was in the army, and on June 7th, 1982, Priscilla Presley opens the gates of Graceland to the public for the first time.
Have you ever been to Graceland?
I have not. I have been to Tennessee. I've been to Nashville, but I've never been to Memphis. So I've not been to Graceland. I'd like to go sometime, though.
Yeah, I think it would be neat.
Yeah. So it's a mansion. It's a mansion on a 13.8 acre estate in Memphis, and is now owned by Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie. She's owned it, and she's the one that kind of oversees it and everything now, and open to the public. In fact, fun fact, the address for Graceland is 3764 Elvis Presley Boulevard.
The street in front of it is actually named after him.
Well, I think they probably, I'm not sure when they named it, but at some point it was, it wasn't Elvis Presley Boulevard before he lived there. I can assure you of that. I don't know that for sure, but I tend to think. That's a nice
way to honor him, though.
Yeah. And it's about 9 miles from downtown Memphis, and it's about 4 miles north of the Mississippi border. Because
really?
Memphis,
is that close?
Yeah, Memphis is, Memphis is right in like southwest Tennessee. It's like you could be at Arkansas in a few minutes. You could be in Mississippi in a few minutes. Like it's right
that's
there.
Cool.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those major cities that's right on a state border.
Right.
You don't really get a ton of them. Like obviously New York is a perfect example of something that is, because Jersey's just across the river. So it's very close. But, a lot of other major cities kind of aren't necessarily near borders, but Memphis is one of them. Anyway, it opened to the public and was listed as on the National Register of Historic Places on November 7th, 1991. It becomes the first rock and roll related site to be added to that list. And it was declared a National Historic Landmark on March 27th, 2006.
Oh, so actually only kind of, well, okay, so I was going to say only kind of recently, but then I'm like, man, 2006 was actually quite a while ago.
Yeah, that was 15 years ago, Trish. Thanks for paying attention. Time keeps on slipping. Anyway, did you know this? And I'm going to guess you probably didn't.
Well, probably not, but let's give it a shot.
Graceland is the third most visited house in the U.S. every year.
Third most.
With over 650,000 visitors a year.
A lot of people going through a house.
Yep.
You have the other two? Now I'm curious.
I do.
Okay, do I have to guess?
I'll go ahead and tell you the Biltmore Estate is one of them.
Oh, what's that one?
Who
lived there?
We'll talk about that at some point in the future. How about that? A little teaser. Keep on listening to our show.
Mystery, okay.
Number one.
Is it the White House?
I was going to say, as soon as I tell you, if you don't figure it out, you're going to get it. Yeah, it's the White House. Okay. Because it is technically a house. A house is in its name, but it is a resident.
Yeah. Because the East Wing is where the president lives, right? And the West Wing is where he does his presidential duties. Right? Wasn't that the whole concept of the West Wing, the TV show?
Yeah. Well, the West Wing is where the president's office is.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the full layout of the building off the top of my head. I've never been there. Again, add it to the list.
I know, me too. Go. DC is definitely a place on my list, but now we'll add Graceland, of course, as well.
So, where did Graceland get its name?
It's actually a good point, because he doesn't list anything about Grace in any of his songs, does he?
No. Well, Amazing Grace, but that.
Well, yeah, that wasn't one of his.
Have been it. Yeah. It wasn't his song. He just sang it. So it goes back to Stephen Tuff, founder of SC Tuff and Company, and they were a major commercial printing firm in Memphis. Okay, and he had a daughter named Grace.
But then how does her name get attached to this ranch that Elvis owns?
It became known as Graceland Farms.
Oh, and so then he's going to buy this Graceland farmland to put his house on.
Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the 1800s.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Grace inherits the land from her dad when he passes away. And after Grace dies, it gets passed down to her niece, who then in 1939 built the mansion that is now known as Graceland.
Oh, that's so neat. Here I was thinking maybe it was like Grace, like an attribute of a person, not the name of a person.
Mm-hmm. So it's named after a person, but there's no tie to Elvis himself directly to the name of it. So when he began his music career, he had purchased a house for himself and his family in Memphis. And just over time, people knew where he lived. He wanted to be able to get away. The neighbors started getting annoyed that people were always coming to the house. So he told his parents to go find like a farmhouse out on some land somewhere. And at the time, Memphis hadn't expanded as it has now. So Graceland was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, which was perfect. And so in March of 1957, he bought the property for $102,000,
which seems so cheap, but I'm assuming with inflation, it's still quite a lot.
Yeah, $100,000 back in 1957 would have been so many. Elvis's father actually had a swimming pool installed in his bedroom.
In his bedroom?
Yes.
Oh my goodness! Talk about living lavishly,
right? And so to this day, Lisa Marie Presley retains 100% sole ownership of Graceland and the whole land and all her father's stuff and costumes and wardrobes and furnitures. And she's, lets everything be available for tours of Graceland.
That's so cool.
In May of 2016, Graceland welcomed its 20 millionth visitor.
Wow. That's just, I know people love his music. I had my babysitter growing up. She was obsessed with Elvis, and she had all kinds of Elvis memorabilia. And like I said, it would be interesting to go and see Graceland, but it's not like a must do on my list.
Yeah, it's not the top of my list, but certainly if I'm in Memphis, I'm going to take a day and go out there.
Oh, there's going to be so many interesting places.
Yeah. In fact, Graceland is one of the few places that on American soil that has hosted an official visit by a foreign head of state.
Oh, who was that?
In June of 2016, President Bush hosted Japanese Prime Minister Koizumi for a tour of the mansion. And so they had an official joint visit with a sitting U.S. president and a current head of state.
That's pretty cool. Was he a big fan of Elvis?
That's the only thing I would guess so.
Yeah.
And, when I found this fact as I was doing the prep for the show, I kind of remembered this happening. Because it is so unique.
Familiar.
Yeah, because it's not something that happens. And in 2014, Prince William and Prince Harry were in Memphis for a friend's wedding. So they visited Graceland. And after the tour, one of the staff members said, it's pretty cool to have a future king come here to visit the king.
Oh, that's a good line.
And I'm like, that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. So Graceland opened its gates June 7th, 1982.
It seems like it would have been earlier than 1982, but yeah.
Well, he had just died 5 years previously. Yeah. And so I think they didn't know what to really do. They were running up expenses on this property and they were like, what could we do? Oh, well, we could just make it into like a museum. It took a few years to get everything set up and planned out, but
they did it.
Yeah.
I keep going back to that pool in the bedroom and thinking how dangerous going to the bathroom at nighttime would be.
Yeah.
I hope they had like a cover or something.
I don't know. And I wonder if it's still there since I haven't been. Obviously, like the Jungle Room, everybody heard of the Jungle Room.
Jungle Room. Yeah.
Everybody knows that was like his place to go relax. In fact, when he would travel on tour, they would take some of his furniture from the house with him and set his hotel rooms up. So that way it would be very similar to his home.
They could feel relaxed.
Yeah, because you get that with celebrities like musicians and stuff that tour on tour buses because they're on tour buses for months at a time. A lot of them will do different things to try to make their bus as homey as possible. Like they might do a similar decor. Like say if they have wood floors in their house, they might have like a wood floor on the bus. Or blue walls. They've got blue walls on the bus, or just different things, just to try to add some comforts of home while you're on the road.
Make you not go crazy living on a bus. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. You know where you would not want to take a bus, though?
Where?
You would not want to take it to a drive-in movie because you will anger people behind you.
Yes. Can you imagine trying to watch the film and I would just climb on top of the bus. Be like, that's it. You bring your bus here?
Well, that's what some people do, like at the infield of races, like NASCAR or IndyCar races or something. They'll bring a group of people will get an old school bus or something, and they'll go sit on top of the bus in the infield and watch the race. But anyway, June 6th, 1933, the first drive-in theater opens in Camden, New Jersey.
New Jersey of all places, huh?
Uh-huh. Now you would think this was probably started by some theater guy or someone in the entertainment business or something, right?
Yep, you would think. I'm going to think you're going to say no, though.
Yep. Richard Hollingshead was a sales manager for his father's auto parts company, and he saw that his mother had issues getting comfortable in traditional movie theater seats. Now, at the time, of course, 1933, nothing like we have now with stadium seating and recliners and all that. So his mom couldn't get comfortable, so he came up with the idea of an open air theater where people could watch movies from the comfort of their vehicles. So he went out in his driveway, he experimented with different techniques, he mounted a Kodak projector on the hood of his car, pinned a sheet up to some trees, put a radio behind the screen. He did all sorts of different ways. He tried, okay, how could we, if it rains, could we still do this? And he figured it all out. And so he actually received a patent for the concept in May of 1933.
Oh.
And just under a month later, with his initial investment of $30,000, which is
an amount of change,
which in current money would be about 616,000 US dollars.
Yeah, so not too shabby.
Yeah. And he charged 25 cents a car and 25 cents per person. And, it proved to be very popular. However, his patent was overturned in 1949.
Oh, no. Why?
Because there are various reasons patents can be overturned. And I'm assuming I wasn't able to find the exact reason that it was overturned, but I believe just because it wasn't really patentable. It was a concept more so than a product. Like
that makes sense.
Right. So
there can't be true ownership of it.
Right. And so once that happened, drive-in theaters popped up all over the country.
That's really interesting. And I love the fact that it started because he noticed that his mom was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it totally, as soon as you said that, it threw me back to in junior high. I had a really interesting, she was an art teacher / health teacher. And that's what she would do is she would take middle benches of like from vans. And that's what she had in her classroom for seating. And so we would sit on car seats and they are quite comfortable.
They are. And so, of course, with the car culture of the 50s and 60s, they became very popular. And at one point, there were over 5,000 theaters across the country.
Wow, that's a lot. I wouldn't have anticipated that many.
Yeah. And now there are fewer than 500. And it was funny because it was one thing that kind of had a revival during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because theaters were closed. People were like, well, we can go to a drive-in. Where's one? Oh, it's 40 miles away. Okay, well, we don't have anything else to do tonight.
Well, and we started having pop-up ones, like in parking lots outside of shopping centers.
Same. We had those here. And it was kind of cool because you then had artists, singers would start doing live concerts or special events like that beamed out to drive-ins.
Yeah, see, just modern problems take modern solutions, which sometimes are actually old solutions.
Yeah. And whenever you come down here, Trish, to Florida, because it's happening eventually.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. A place we will go and have lunch or dinner will be the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater Restaurant.
Ooh, this sounds very intriguing. I'm already game.
Yes. So at Disney's Hollywood Studios, they have a restaurant that is designed like a 50s drive-in theater.
Oh, neat. I love that.
So the booths are, resemble cars of the period. Mm-hmm. And, the waitresses will come over and, bring your food. And up in front of you, so all the booths face the same direction because you're sitting in cars.
Right.
Okay. And up in front of you, there's a big projection screen where they're playing clips of old 50s and 60s sci-fi films like Plan 9 from Outer Space or Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and like all that sort of stuff.
Oh, that sounds so cool.
And it's dark, like the ceiling is dark and there's like little fiber optic lights to make twinkling stars and everything. Yeah,
This
it's
definitely
really
sounds
cool.
like it's got to have like an Outsiders cosplay happening or like an Archie
Oh yeah, totally. We could do something. It's a lot
or
of fun.
Grease.
It's one of my. It might be my favorite restaurant at Disney.
Oh, cool.
Like
Well,
within the
definitely have to do that.
parks. Yeah. I mean, there's some I haven't done that. So but it's the favorite one I've done. How about that? I'll say that with
That's a good
confidence.
disclaimer.
Yeah. So
Very cool. Well, and something that they should make a movie about is the infamous Tank Man. Like June 5th, 1989, Tank Man is going to halt the progress of a column of advancing tanks for over half an hour after the Tiananmen Square protests had occurred. So I know that this image is really, really famous thanks to Time magazine, right? Where they have the image of the Soul Man in front of the four tanks, or sometimes they'll zoom in and it's just the one tank. But actually, if you look at the original photograph from the incident, Tank Man, who we have no idea who this gentleman is, we just know he was a bystander walking across the square. He has two shopping bags in his possession, and it almost just looks like he gets fed up with what's going on with these protests and just kind of like kicks the tank and he has a conversation with the one of the drivers of the tank or the person in charge of the tank, I guess, right? There's a team of people working
yeah,
the tank.
you'd have the operator, I believe, is what they
Yeah.
would be called. Yeah.
But when you look at the zoomed out photo, there's at least 12 tanks in the line.
Yeah.
And if you think about what had happened previous to this incident, right, where the Chinese government ends up sending the People's Liberation Army into the square to deal with student protesting that had happened starting in February of this year. And there was a massacre. There was numerous students that were killed and harmed. And then these tanks are rolling away. Like, honestly, the tank should have just kept going. Like, that's what people thought was going to happen, is that he was just going to get run over. And for whatever reason, the tanks stop and they have this conversation with this man. And after half an hour, he's dragged away by two individuals and the tanks keep going. And there's no official record of, like I said, who this man is. There's no record of what happened to him afterwards or what happened to the tank crew. There's speculation that he was dragged away by military officials from the Chinese government. There's also just he was taken away by two bystanders that were just worried about his safety and that he just went back off in normal life.
Yeah. It's so crazy that this is such a iconic historical moment that everybody knows, and yet we know virtually nothing about the guy, what happened to him, why he did it, any of it.
Nope.
It's really crazy. And here we are 30 years later and we still don't know.
Nope. And
nor do
the
I
Chinese
think we
government,
ever will.
I don't think we ever will. And the Chinese government, the only thing they've really said is that there's no record that he was arrested, and that's it. And that was the last time that they spoke about it was I believe 2010. Shoot. Yeah. No, 2020. So the last time a government official spoke about it was to Mike Wallace in 2020. And it was the general secretary at the time. And he just stated the gentleman was never arrested. I don't know where he is now. And he also emphasized that, the tank did stop and did not run the young man over. So he wanted to ensure that the international community knew that.
You almost wonder if the tank operator, granted, I guess they wouldn't necessarily have known that they were on camera, but did they just think we can't run this guy over because it's just too obvious, like it's too public?
Right. Yeah, it's maybe it was because the official orders were to deal with the protesters in the square, and this individual wasn't a protester. I don't know. Most of the journalists actually had left because they saw the protest the day before having basically been squashed.
Right.
And so they had taken off. And so there was very few journalists left. And then there was just a few of them that caught this image. And it's become one of the most influential photos of the 20th century. And because it's so highly censored in China, the majority of the population don't actually know that this incident took place. And Tank Man himself probably has no idea that he is actually an international symbol for standing up for, democracy and human rights and representation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And that it's very likely he has no idea what he did. Yeah. He may have he's got shopping bags in his hand. I guess we're going to assume he was probably coming back from
from the
the
market.
market or
Yeah.
something, and was probably heading home. And he may have just went home that night and, well, I just
And
told
that was
those
it.
guys to, stick it, and
Yeah.
never has
He's,
thought of it again, and has no idea he is a global, figure that people know.
yeah. So just so interesting. It would be very, I don't know how we would ever figure it out. Or, I mean, I guess the Chinese government would just have to be forthcoming if they did know something. I mean, according to them, they don't. And maybe that's the truth. We just, like you said, he went home and that was that. But it would be super interesting to have a film, maybe trying to figure out who Tank Man is. There is references in pop culture. Like I know there's a Tom Clancy book that reference Tank Man. And in his book, the gentleman is arrested and executed. So that was his take on what may have happened to him. And there's lots of theories out there. But yeah, the mystery persists.
Yeah. And I think it will continue. Something that will continue on, it would make a good movie. And one of the slogans for our next topic was Ride the Movie.
Ah.
And that is because on June 7th, 1990, Universal Studios Florida, as it was known at the time, opens. Of course, now it's known as Universal Orlando Resort, because there's Universal Orlando Theme Park, there's Islands of Adventure, there's Volcano Bay Water Park, there's hotels, there's Universal. It's a whole thing, and they just announced Epic Universe, which is going to be its third park, or well, its third theme park, because they technically count the water park. There's a lot of stuff out there, is what I'm getting at, people. And it all started on June 7th, 1990. The concept for Universal Studios actually goes back to 1992, when they began ideas of working on expanding it and having another Universal theme park. Because at the time, Universal Studios Hollywood in Los Angeles was basically a studio tour where you'd ride in the tram and you could go see sound stages where things were filmed. And
right, it's more like just the setups, right, for where things are filmed. This was the idea.
That was the idea. And so they ultimately then kind of added on rides and stuff here and there and expanded it. So this concept was going to be built from the ground up. So we can build a theme park and we can have a functioning studio there as well.
Cool. And I mean, that's a pretty neat idea.
Yeah. And so Steven Spielberg, who was one of the co-founders, he felt that this could be a good way we should put it, Orlando, because it can compete with Walt Disney World and SeaWorld. Mm-hmm. And so the park was built. This is actually kind of mind-blowing. It's a lot of money, but it was built for about $630 million, which, yes, in the 80s is a lot of money. Yep. But when you compare it, like inflation for inflation, it still is going to cost you more today. Like the new park that Universal's getting ready to build here is going to be way more than that. I can assure, with inflation included.
So it's a steal of a deal at the time frame.
I think so.
They were very wise in their decisions.
Yeah. So, like, for example, one of the ways that the park is different, like in Hollywood, you're on the tram, okay, and you travel close to a shoreline where Jaws attacks you before you move on to the next part of the tour. Whereas here, at the time, we had a Jaws ride where you'd get in a boat and you'd go through Amity Harbor, and then you'd encounter the sharks and that sort of thing. So it was that's like kind of how things were different, because you built this as a theme park in mind. And so, of course, one of the big attractions at Universal Studios in the 90s was Nickelodeon Studios. And we had talked about back in April when Nickelodeon first went on the air, and we got into the history of Nickelodeon. So they opened here and they produced, shows like Double Dare and Guts and Nick Arcade, and a lot of the game shows, and some of the live action shows like Clarissa Explains It All were filmed here. Some of All That was here. Keenan and Kel, like a lot of those 90s Nickelodeon shows were filmed at Nick Studios in Florida. Well, in the late 90s, they opened 2 new studios in California, one for live action, one for animation, and they began shifting away and focusing their attention out there. And just in the early 2000s, they wound up, there wasn't as much production going on here, so everything was moving out to California. And in 2005, the studio closed its doors.
Sadness.
However, all was not lost, because the sound stages where Nickelodeon was became a theater for the Blue Man Group show.
Oh, now there's a new life.
Yes.
Right, for this building.
Which, unfortunately, in February, they announced they would not be continuing their residency here.
Is that simply because COVID just killed it?
I think so. I mean, they had been here for 10, 11, 12 years. So I think they had maybe the show had just ran its course, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe it would
have
have without COVID. Who knows?
Like, I know we have Cirque du Soleil out at Disney Springs, out at Walt Disney World, and it's currently closed, but they were planning to close anyway because every handful of years they close down for a bit and come up with a new show.
Yes.
So that's the speculation, is that they're still going to be there. They're just working on a new show. But fun fact about Nickelodeon Studios, there was a time capsule buried in front of the building.
And when's it supposed to be opened?
Well, it was buried on April 30th, 1992, and it will be opened on April 30th, 2042. So 50 years later.
Okay. We still have a little while to go.
We still have a little while to go. And we know what is in this time capsule. Some of the things in the time capsule. There's stuff from the 90s, like skateboard, comic book, phone book, VHS copies of Back to the Future and Home Alone. There's assorted photographs of celebrities. I don't think there's Dunkaroos. There is a food item in there we'll get to in a minute. There's a copy of the Orlando, Florida TV guide from that week, which that's going to be kind of fun because
that'd be neat. Yeah.
What's a TV guide? Wait, what? You had to buy these things at the store? Yes. There's a Barbie doll, a Game Boy, rollerblades, Reebok pumps. Remember those?
Oh yeah, we did pump them up.
Yep.
My brother had a pair.
Twinkies. So we're gonna see if a Twinkie can survive 50 years.
Oh goodness.
So now, go ahead.
Dissolved. I was gonna say, or it's just like dissolved or something.
Yeah.
Watch, it's gonna come out perfect, and I'm gonna be amazed.
Yes, and I'm sure we could probably find somebody willing to take a bite out of it and see how they feel. No. That person will not be me, but. So Nickelodeon Studios closed. What's happened to this time capsule? Well,
I'm assuming it's still buried. Like they're still going to wait and open it. Right?
They're still going to wait, but it has gone on. It's gone on a journey. So even after Nickelodeon kind of shut down in 2005, it was still there. Like I've walked by it since the Nickelodeon Studios closed, and kind of looks like a green manhole cover, and it says time capsule buried.
Oh, okay.
Here, everything. So it was actually moved to the nearby Nickelodeon Suites Resort that opened.
Okay.
So it was like a whole Nickelodeon hotel. Now, the hotel closed in 2016 and was rebranded as a Holiday Inn. Okay. So our time capsule, which was supposed to stay buried for 50 years, has now moved again and is now currently housed at the Nickelodeon Animation Studios in Burbank, California.
Really? It's all the way over there now?
Yeah. But I at least like the fact that they kept it around.
That's true. Yes. I like the fact that they're honoring the time capsule.
Agreed. And
my historian heart is happy.
April 30th, 1942, or 2042, rather. We will get to see it.
2042. Oh, gosh. How old?
Don't do the math. So,
I don't like doing the
math. Anyway, Universal is the 6th most attended theme park in the U.S. and the 11th most attended in the world.
Oh, not too shabby.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah.
So, well, from writing the movies to reading on TV, Trish, that takes us to our next topic.
It does take us to our next topic. June 6, 1983. I think one of the most epic theme songs that most people of our generation would know, right? So, Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Just take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere with friends to know and ways to grow. A reading rainbow, right? So, of course, Reading Rainbow is going to premiere on PBS. What's interesting is it is released only to certain areas of America on this date, on June 6th. So it's going to be in Nebraska, Buffalo, and New York before nationally being released on PBS Kids July 11th. So just a few months later, or a month later, sorry, not a few. And it's going to broadcast until August 28th, 2009 before going into reruns. And then it'll eventually stop its reruns. And the production company is going to go on a very interesting adventure on how to bring back Reading Rainbow.
They should write a book about it.
They should write a book about it.
And they could read it on YouTube or something.
I loved Reading Rainbow as a kid. I don't know if it was something that you watched.
I watched it, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a total of 155 half-hour episodes spanning over 21 seasons. And of course, it encouraged children to read. And it would start with LeVar Burton, who was one of the kind of founders of the show as well.
He needs to be the new Jeopardy host. I haven't even seen his stint yet because it doesn't air till later this summer, but make him the Jeopardy host.
Yes, I am fully supportive. I did like Anderson Cooper. I did catch him. I thought he was really, really, he did a really, really good job. But yes. LeVar Burton, that would make my heart so happy. Not only like my reading heart, it would make my Star Trek heart happy because, of course, he played a character on Star Trek: The Next Gen, which on one episode of Reading Rainbow, he took kids on the set and showed them behind the scenes of that television show. So that would make me so happy. It's won numerous awards, including a Peabody Award and 26 Emmy Awards, which were all in the Outstanding Children's Series. Of course, each episode centered on a topic, and then it would read a children's book that explored that topic and move into a couple of different segments. And then at the very end, I loved that they had recommendations of books by kids that they had read a book, and then they were giving you a little synopsis of the book and recommending it to you, which I thought was so cute. And I always wanted to be one of those kids.
It was definitely a show, I think, that it had a lot lasting impact on a lot of.
Well, and the literacy rate in America is highly attributed just to this show, which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Right. And when it went off the air, LeVar Burton actually wanted to bring it back because they noticed that literacy rates were dipping and declining again. So on May 28th, 2014, he started a Kickstarter to revive the show under his company, which is RR Kids with a Z. In under 12 hours, the show had reached its $1 million goal. And then a new goal was created. The goal itself was to create a educational version for schools to use free of costs and get those literacy rates back. Now, what's interesting is...
I remember this.
Do you? I don't remember this at all. Mm-hmm. It's like totally not in my memory bank. The following day, May 29th, 2014, they reached $2 million. The campaign would eventually reach $5,408,916 on Kickstarter. There was an extra $1 million given by Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane and $70,000 raised via other direct contributions from other people to a grand total of $6,478,916. With 105,857 backers, the campaign holds Kickstarter's record for most backers. So, like, people love themselves some Reading Rainbow.
Yes, that they do. But I think that's great because that was, I think, a lot of the generation that grew up on it saying, though this was important to us.
Yeah.
Let's make this happen for future generations. I think that's great.
What was sad, though, is dun dun dun. There was a lawsuit over the brand and name in August 2017. So what eventually happened in October of 2017 is WNED, the owners of the Reading Rainbow brand, and then RR Kids, Burton's company, settled out of court. And while we don't know the exact terms of that, the results were that RR Kids was no longer a licensee of the Reading Rainbow brand, and it was rebranded LeVar Burton Kids, and its services, now including Skyberry, removed references to Reading Rainbow. In addition, though, Burton was allowed to continue using his Reading Rainbow catchphrase, which is, "You don't have to take it from me."
That's good. At least he kept the catchphrase.
Yeah. So you can go on to Skyberry. It sounds like berry, but it's like library. And
Skyberry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can go online, and it's kind of like it doesn't really look like Reading Rainbow, though, so the nostalgic factor is kind of lost. But the main concept of helping children learn to love reading is there.
Well, I like the name, though, because rainbows are in the sky, and it's about books, and you get books at a library. So Skyberry. I get it.
Skyberry.
I like it.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was being nosy and scoping out the website when I was doing the reference for this story. And I was like, yeah, like as an educator, it's got a clean look to it. So I just personally miss the nostalgic look.
Yeah.
But
that's what we're here for every week, to bring you nostalgia and fun historical stuff. Yeah. Yes.
Your random trivia facts for the week.
Yes. So we thank you for joining us once again. And as always, if you didn't make it to the end of this episode, I hope the book you check out from a library has every page dog-eared and you have to like undo them while you're reading your book. But since you made it to the end, I hope that all of your library books are perfect and in pristine condition, and that you take a look as you read a book on the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. Trish, tell them how they can contact us.
All right. As always, guys, if you have questions, concerns, queries, or freakouts, you can reach us on the Time Machine with Trish and Mike on Instagram, the Time Machine with Trish and Mike at gmail.com. You throw that into the Google machine for YouTube and it'll bring us up. Please hit subscribe and like, and it'll help us get our official branding there on YouTube. And you can also go onto the Anchor app or Anchor website, find the Time Machine with Trish and Mike, and you can leave us a voicemail that we can include in the broadcast.
Yes, and we'll catch you next week right here on the Time Machine.